Good morning and welcome to the Informed Perspective. And today on our podcast series, we are going to be looking at exploring AI. Artificial intelligence offers a profound opportunity to boost productivity and reimagine how we live and work. For many of us, it's already part of everyday life, supercharging research, reshaping how we search for information, and integrating into tools across design apps, search engines, and workplace platforms. AI is transforming the way we work, the way we learn, connect, and make decisions. It's streamlining business operations, reshaping classrooms, and fueling activism. But it also raises urgent questions about ethics, social impact, and human well-being. Many of you listening may have witnessed immense technological change during your lifetimes. In mine, we've gone from a 4-channel television to unlimited on-demand channels available anytime, covering every subject imaginable. We've moved from cars with manual doors and windows and no hint of air conditioning to electronically powered vehicles, potentially with heated steering wheels and seats, automated lane control, cruise control, and braking. And soon these cars are going to be driving by themselves. We've gone from landline phones to smartphones, offering limitless possibilities, from physical cassettes, records and CDs, to online music providers delivering our favorite tunes at the click of a button. Online shopping has brought us unlimited choice delivered with speed, and now ChatGPT is even handling many of our administrative tasks. Technology has transformed our lives and opened up a world of opportunity. Yet in recent years, it feels as if everything is accelerating as we hurtle headfirst into the age of AI. There's been much change and advancements in the past, but somehow this feels a bit different. Even AI developers admit that AI has learned far faster than anticipated. AI has crept up on all of us. Often without realizing it, we're using it every day. Potentially, we're losing jobs to AI, maybe using our brains less and losing social skills. But on the other hand, AI offers many advantages, potentially freeing up more of our time, driving innovation, providing work shortcuts, and eliminating monotonous automated tasks. So how can we ensure that AI is used fairly and responsibly? How do we prevent it from reinforcing existing inequalities? And how can we build systems that focus on trust, fairness, and include those often left behind by technology? In today's conversation, we explore these critical intersections: AI and ethics, AI in the workplace, AI in education, and AI's role in activism and equality. As we step into this evolving conversation, we'll explore how generative AI is showing up in our lives, what questions it raises about humanity and equity, and what kinds of futures we might imagine or avoid together. The conversation around AI needs to be about people, about how we think, how we grow, and how we shape a future where AI serves humanity and not the other way around. Organizations are becoming increasingly virtual. As physical tasks become more and more the domain of robots, people's contribution will depend on what they think and not what they do. Today's guests will help us think more deeply by sharing their perspectives on AI. Thinking is one thing we can still potentially outdo robots at, and I'll put that to you later to find out if that's what you really think. This promises to be a very exciting conversation. And as ever, here I come with my quotes, just a few to get us rolling today. Albert Einstein famously said, "The measure of intelligence is the ability to change." And Charles Darwin, "It is not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change." Isn't it part of the reason that we have potentially survived so long as a species, because of our ability to adapt and to keep making advancements? Stephen Hawking has cautioned the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. But what is full AI, and how will we know when we reach it? And Demis Hassabis, the co-founder and CEO of DeepMind, reminds us AI is going to be a part of our lives and will help us solve many problems if we let it. In the same vein, our famous Mark Zuckerberg, we are entering a world where we will learn to coexist with AI, not as its masters, but as its collaborators. And do we really have that agency? Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple Inc., "The future of AI is in our hands." So after that, I'm going to move over to Jenny and ask her to introduce our wonderful guests today.
Thank you, Penny. It's certainly a very exciting introduction, so I can't wait to get started with the discussion. So firstly, I'm going to introduce Dr. Stephanie Fitzgerald. She's a chartered clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist, international speaker, and award-winning author. With experience as a health and wellbeing consultant across industries like rail, atomic weapons, civil engineering, and Premier League football, she now integrates ethical AI frameworks into her work. Stephanie helps companies use AI in ways that employees feel trusted, engaged, and supported. She focuses on using proven methods to ensure AI tools improve employees' work lives while keeping them safe, valued, and mentally well. Her goal is to make sure AI in the workplace benefits everyone. And Kayode Alabi is an EdTech leader, TEDx speaker, poet, author, and social entrepreneur dedicated to education and youth empowerment. Growing up in Makoko, Africa's largest floating sum, and losing his mother at a young age, Hamed's early struggles shaped his mission to transform lives through education. At 15, he began teaching in rural Lagos and later founded the Kayode Alabi Leadership and Creative Initiative, training over 10,000 unserved youth in life skills and leadership. Hamed has worked globally supporting youth-led change in over 150 countries and speaking at UNESCO's Transforming Education Summit. He is also the founder of skilltorural.org and launched Rafiki AI, Africa's first generative AI career advisor for underserved youth. Patsy Stevenson is a British women's rights activist who rose to prominence after being arrested in 2021 vigil for Sarah Everard, sparking national outrage. Since then, she has become a vocal advocate for gender equality, police accountability, and civil liberties, speaking at events like TEDx and contributing to outlets like Marie Claire and LBC. She is currently writing a book and working to address gender bias in tech. Nicki Watts is a neurodiverse facilitator, former charity CEO, and an experienced youth practitioner with over 15 years of working creatively with young people and communities. She led the People's Theatre Collective, where she developed powerful theatre-based projects tackling violence against women and girls. Now, Nicki is turning her focus to the digital world, exploring how AI is reshaping safeguarding risks for young people, from chatbot misuse to deep fakes and algorithmic bias. She's passionate about helping parents, educators, and youth workers navigate these challenges with clarity and care. So we've got a real diverse and I think lovely balance of AI use across many industries and platforms. So let's get started, Penny, with the questions. Oh, you're on mute, Penny. So
Stephanie, good morning.
Good morning.
To dive in with you this morning. From what we've heard, you're clearly very passionate about creating happier and engaged workplaces. And you've talked about the importance of involving non-tech professionals, such as psychologists, sociologists, and well-being experts in the development and deployment of AI systems. What do you think this kind of cross-disciplinary input, why do you think it's so crucial, especially when we're introducing AI into people's everyday working lives?
I think it's a really great question because I think sometimes when I go into businesses, people think, why is a clinical psychologist coming to talk to me? I have no technical background at all. I'm not a developer. But for me, people are at the heart of successful AI and certainly the heart of successful implementation. And if we want to integrate AI successfully into our workplaces and more broadly into our lives, we have to make sure that people understand and that we're engaging with them in a very ethical, safe practice so that people aren't just sleepwalking into a disaster, and particularly the amount of personal data that we're handing over, etc. So my entire career has been based on a code of ethics and conduct, and looking at how do we ethically research people, how do we use an evidence base, how do we look at behavioural change, how do we look at successful integration of new systems, new products, etc. And how do we do that without using people? How do we make sure we have fully informed consent? How do we make sure that people are very aware of what we're asking of them? And I think at the moment AI is at best close to the edge of non-ethical practice, and I think in other realms it's illegal, the way AI is being used, and certainly some of those medical legal issues come across. And this is why it's really important to include psychologists, healthcare professionals, etc., people who are so used to working with and adopting ethical frameworks. I think the other side, if we're going to talk brass tacks, is we can save you a huge amount of money, because if you engage with people who understand people and who have the evidence base to support people to integrate these products successfully, really engage with them, trust them, use them in a very effective way, you're going to save a huge amount of money. And we've seen businesses fail with integration in AI or with AI where they've put it in place in a blanket approach, right? All employees are now using this system, and you see people get frustrated, they hate the system, they disengage from it, they refuse to use it, it adds to their workload, and it's just the wrong approach. So I think it's really important from an ethical viewpoint, but also on a practical viewpoint, we can save a lot of money.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I'm wondering how you build trust with employees for AI, because potentially if you've got it sort of creeping its way in, employees might not be aware actually that they're using it. So what strategies do you use there?
I think education, without doubt, is the first one. So understanding what is the system, what does it do, what data is it gathering, where is that data kept, all the things that you would use for any system in an organisation. If you were using a recruitment system or an HR software or something like that, you'd want to know, well, what's happening with my details? How does this affect me personally? And I think sometimes where companies get it wrong is they just blanket approach. So they will say, we are now using this system, without integrating it into the workforce at all. And so then the workforce are there saying, well, actually, we aren't using this system. You're telling us to use the system. We know nothing about it. We can't reassure our employees or our teams or our colleagues about the impact the system's going to have. And that really is when you see very problematic disengagement. So I think it's really important to educate people, but also to bring them on the journey. It's like any change in the workplace. If you just dump it on people and say, we are now doing this, people feel done to, and that's really unhelpful. Whereas if you can say, what problem is it that we're trying to solve? Do you think this would be a useful tool? Let me demonstrate where I think it could be useful, but then you tell me as well, and then we can integrate it into the workforce if we think it's needed. Because I do think there is an element of AI sometimes where it's a solution seeking a problem rather than, so sometimes businesses are putting in systems that aren't necessarily needed, but it's the latest tech and they want to be seen as thought leaders. And so for me, it's asking the workforce, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then educate them as to how AI might be able to support them.
Yeah, and I'm sort of thinking the EU seems to be at the forefront, right, of the implication of putting legislation into place to sort of deal with the AI. Businesses are going to have a minefield to have to play with, how they make sure that they're ticking all the T's off and everything. I mean, how do you see that? These are often businesses that maybe potentially have no idea of what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's really key as well. So the regulation, if you look at something like the EU AI Act, it's 142 pages of legalese. Who's reading that? The CEO that wants to be seen and go on LinkedIn and advertise that they're a thought leader and they're using the latest AI tech is not necessarily going through that document and making sure that they're compliant and making sure that regulations are up to date. And unfortunately, companies seem to learn through mistakes. So the first lawsuit, the first, case that's reported in the media, that's when people sit up. So again, that education piece, I think I often say to CEOs, well, I've read the boring documentation, so you don't have to. Here are the bits where it applies to you. And I do think it's such useful regulation. So even though it can feel a bit arduous to go through, it's so useful because the different parts that apply to different sectors. So if you work in finance, you work in healthcare, you work in education, there are very specific rules and regulations that apply to you. But also it's really important that we don't see this as separate to existing regulation and legal frameworks, because the laws exist. We're told It's just very difficult to regulate AI. And it's like, actually, no, it's not. All the legal frameworks exist, but we've told ourselves it's difficult. So if we look at things like the copyright issues with, creatives, I'm a writer myself. I know my books have been illegally scraped. Where do I stand on that? Actually, what makes that difficult isn't the law. The law's really clear. It's the fact that I don't have meta money. That's what makes that difficult. So it is really challenging, but certainly helping businesses understand, again, that education piece of these are the areas that you need to be really aware of. This is where your compliance issues may crop up. Those kind of things I think could be so helpful for businesses to help them understand this is how we can integrate AI well. This is how we can be trusted and our employees will trust us and engage with us on this process, because it takes one error, one fallout, one bias, and your employees will say, I'm not going near that because I don't trust it. So it is really important, again, to come back to that education piece. It can be a bit arduous, a bit boring to go through all the frameworks, but it's so needed. And as I say, that's where people like me kind of go in and say, look, I've read it, so you don't have to. These are the bits you need to know.
So are you doing that also in a workshop style?
Yeah, sometimes workshop, often casual conversations like this, just to get people thinking in that space. I often refer to myself as the fun police, because I think I've done it for a long time in wellbeing, where people said, we should do this. And I've gone in and said, oh, that's not medical legally compliant, or whatever it may be. And so I now just see myself as the fun police in AI, when people say, we need to do this. Often it's just a casual conversation of say, have you thought about the inherent bias in this? Or actually this has been shown to not be effective, or whatever it may be. So it's often just calming people down. There's a huge amount of excitement about AI. I'm a massive AI optimist. I've got an NHS background, worked in healthcare for a long time. I think the potential is amazing, but only if we do it well, only if we do it ethically, only if we put people at the centre. So I do think it's really valuable. I think the potential is so exciting, but sometimes my job is just to calm everyone down.
Have you come across this emotion recognition at all in any of the businesses that you've been in? Because that fascinates me, being able to sort of work out whether your clients in a meeting, or your employees within the meeting are actually paying attention or not.
Yeah, I mean, so things like that I think are hugely problematic, and certainly from like an ethical point of view, but also what is the problem you're trying to solve? So if your employees aren't paying 100% attention, what do you think that's doing to your company and to your productivity and your output? Your average full-time employee is productive for about 2.5 hours a day. So what is it that we're trying to solve? Is it that your business isn't running? Is it that you think everyone's going to be more efficient if you point out to them, well, you weren't making good eye contact in that meeting? Are we thinking about neurodivergent colleagues? Are we it's so problematic to simplify very complex human interaction down to eye contact, fidgeting, stomach rumbling, whatever it may be. I think that it becomes hugely problematic. We're not simple black and white creatures. We are really nuanced, and our interactions are really nuanced. And I think it's really important that we remember that, and that we don't sort of simplify ourselves and dumb ourselves down to fit with an algorithm.
And I think with the experience, people are experiencing the efficiency of it and that benefit, and that can kind of cloud the judgment, but have a real appeal when you're actually, but step back, like to what was the problem? Why can I not be that efficient myself? Or what is the gap that's missing, and what role should or could AI play in that? Penny and I experienced when we, for our Tween Talk logo, one of our tweens designed it, and we just chucked it into an AI generator to get it digitized. We didn't ask it to create, we just digitized it. And as you mentioned, Stephanie, when we went to go down the copywriting route, the lawyer was like, you've got no claim on it. You've got no claim on that because you've put it into the system. You've put it out there that, the generator kind of owns that.
You mustn't give that away.
No, so then we were like, okay, why didn't we? So then we used that as inspiration and got it designed properly. So now we have, ownership over it. But it's through that experience of the efficiency that we learn actually the gaps and the problems we wanted to face, or the needs we had, I should say. And we enlisted a graphic designer and went back to almost basics, but it still helped us get that inspiration. And I think that's where it's quite interesting, and you can have such a good experience, but it doesn't mean that's always the solution.
Yeah, and I think the efficiency sometimes could be misleading, because I think recent research that I read was something like 68% of tasks are less efficient with AI because you have to go back and double check. The data simply isn't good enough to just hand things over. If you look at AI summaries, on Google, something like that, they're often wildly inaccurate. There's no easy way to report that and say, actually, you've done it wrong. So the inefficiency that's being created, but also the trust that we have. We really trust computers, and we tend to have this bias where we trust the output. So you could have asked that AI generator, is this mine? Does this belong to me? And it could have said, yeah, absolutely, this is yours. It has no basis for that. It's telling you what it thinks you want to hear, and it's putting sentences together in an order of probability. So the algorithm's told it that makes sense, but it has no concept of truth. It's a machine at the end of the day. So I think it's really important that we do go into these things with our eyes wide open. That's one example with the logo, but you could have put in your whole business plan. You could have put in your whole anything and thought, oh, just smarten this up, tighten this up. Here's my CV, just elevate this a little bit. And you've just given that away, and then you don't own any of it. So it's really important. That's a beautiful example of something that you trusted respectfully, almost blindly, because no one made you aware, oh, by the way, this could be problematic for your company in the future.
The fact that no one still knows quite whether that will be a problem or not, because that's such a gray zone, right? We just don't know.
Yeah.
Right, Hamid, I'd like to turn to you now. You've launched Rafiki AI, which I gather means friend in Swahili, which makes me link it back to the Lion King, my favorite baboon ever. And this is Africa's first generative AI career advisor for underserved youth. It gives young people a conversational multilingual AI application on WhatsApp so that they can explore careers and get tailored advice and create personalized roadmaps in just 1 to 2 minutes. What inspired you to use this AI for social good, and how do you see its potential in transforming the lives of marginalized communities?
Thanks for asking that question. And I love what Stephanie mentioned, that we need to actually engage people in AI because I think we actually need ordinary people to actually discuss AI. Like, people actually know so much. Until you start having conversation with them, you know that, oh, actually, you actually know so much, so you don't have to be like an AI native to actually contribute to the conversation. So I just want to add that. What inspired me, I think people used to think that I created this solution just now, but I've been thinking about this long time ago. I think it was in 2017, I walked to a rural school to organize my first career talk. That was myself, my cousin, and a friend. And we're talking about these kids, about our own experience growing up and sharing our own experiences, talking about different kind of career paths. And after this session, these kids had so many questions. Like, I was just there outside, depleted building, it's just like this rural school. And there was just like a lot of questions from these kids. Oh, my mom doesn't want me to study this. Oh, I'm interested in acting. I don't know how to go about it. And then I found myself answering questions about even the sectors I know nothing about, or even, answering questions about, like, how do you convince your parents then? What would you do? And, I had all of those ideas, and I noticed that my own knowledge itself is limiting to provide like career advice. So I went and I started watching all the YouTube videos on career counseling and career support. I was just like churning in YouTube videos, watching a lot of them, learning so much. And, from watching those videos, from reading about career progression and all of sorts, I came about like this ISLP model. So it is called like interest, strengths, limitation, and purpose. And then I came about like different kind of like questions. So what are you good at? What do your friends tell you you're good at? What do you enjoy doing? What do you get tired of? Like, I was just coming about like all of those kind of questions. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go back to the schools, we'll talk to the kids, ask them those questions. From our interaction, we'll like, okay, maybe you should think about this. Maybe you should think about this career path. I mean, we weren't saying that this is the career path you should follow. We're just like having suggestions, right? And, we started doing that, but we can't do that at a scale, because there were like, thousands and thousands and thousands of young people in these schools. We started like recruiting more volunteers to join us in this group conversation. So we had a call out, started asking my friends to join me. Let's go to the schools together. I would train them on how to like provide career support and advice. And then we'll go to schools and then have those conversations. But we can't do that at scale. So we started doing different things. In fact, we actually like created a helpline, like a call helpline, call us if you need like support, especially for young children who are at risk in school. So we did a call line, but that also didn't scale. That also didn't go anywhere. But I had this idea, I had this model, this ISLP model. And when ChatGPT came through, I was like, okay, I started engaging with ChatGPT, started chatting with it, started having conversation. So I started like, okay, there's something here. I don't know what is here, but there's something here. And I think I can use this for social good. There are so many people who have used generative AI for their own personal benefits. But for me, I was thinking about how do I actually help young people within my community? Because the problem at scale, like there are actually over 100 million underserved and displaced young people. Many of them do not have access to career information. In fact, OECD released statistics recently that young people under the age of 15 are a crisis because they don't even know what to do, what career to pursue. So there are like this data out there, and I'm contending with this data. I'm contending with the problem largely. So what I started doing was so I started pitching. So I would pitch, I would go for competition. I think I got into a program at the London Business School last year, and it was their accelerator program. And I was pitching this idea, I was just adding it to like the whole idea I have. And I don't think people understand yet. So I started like making sense of the idea bit by bit. I would submit applications to different competitions. People would not probably, I won't get into any of those. So I finally got the Impact AI scholarship to attend the One Young World Summit in Canada. And I went there and I was speaking to like these different people who are like AI creative directors. I was speaking to like attending sessions. I was hearing people were using AI for social good as well. And my brain was expanding. Like I was literally exploding right there. And I came back home, I opened my laptop and because I also published a book where I put these models in, and children can actually read that book and use the model to like determine their career paths. So I just brought up my book. I look at the model I've developed, and then I went to ChatGPT. I'm like, I've developed this model ISLP. This is what it does. This is the career path. This is the career process of like interest, strengths, limitation, and purpose. Could you generate a career pathway plan for me? And then in like 1 minute, I got the career pathway plan, and I'm like, okay, there's something here. So I said, okay, could you give me a no-code tool to develop this as fast as I can? Because I'm not a developer, right? And, and then there was like different no-code tool from Lambo.io to Rasa to different tools. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to use Lambo.io because it's very simple to use. And then I went to Lambo.io and I started, I was like literally destroying everything. So I would write my question, I would write my response, but the limitation was that it was just predictive AI because I would put the response that I want, right? And then it gives it to me. It wasn't generative. So, and I could not also code because by the time I wanted to use generative AI, I needed to add some variables. I needed to add some coding. I couldn't do those things. I'm like, okay, now I can do this thing. Like I actually built a prototype that I can test using predictive AI, but then I can't go beyond this. So I'm like, okay, now I know my problem. I know what to do now. So what I did was I saved everything that I've done. I screen recorded everything that I've done. I'm like, this is my first MVP. That is my most viable product. This is my first MVP. So what I did was I went to my developer. We used to develop on my tech product. I'm like, okay, I've gotten this idea. Let's talk. And then we had this conversation and I'm like, this is what I want to build. And I want it to be on WhatsApp because we're exploring, should we create a separate platform for it or should it be on WhatsApp? And I'm like, the children want to support. It might take time for them to even like go on the internet to browse because, the internet level, the internet penetration is low within this underserved community. But I know that with like even 10 megabytes, I can actually use WhatsApp. So I'm like, WhatsApp is the best platform to actually reach people. And in Nigeria alone, I think there are about 60 million conversations that goes on WhatsApp every day. So I'm like, okay, there's something here at scale that we can do. So I'm like, we're going to use WhatsApp. So we started talking, we started exploring models. And we're like, okay, we use generative AI, and I shared it with him, and then he went on to develop. They came with the first prototype, and I was testing the first prototype, and I'm like, this is not interactive. Children will struggle with this. So I'm like, I don't want this. So I started having conversation with my friend who are like experts within, they're like, these are like my friends who are also from the continent. They've done, something around career and AI. So we started having conversations. I started talking to people because sometimes you need to also share ideas with people to just hear feedback. And they were like, Ahmed, you need to make sure this is interactive. You need to make sure that kids actually understand this. So what I did was I went back and I wrote multiple prompts myself. Like I wrote multiple prompts in a way that a 5-year-old can understand. So I wrote multiple prompts and I was writing multiple prompts. I was writing hints. I was writing the kind of response I want to see, the kind of engagement based on local experience, local context. So I was framing it within the local context based on the kids we've spoken to in the past, based on those conversations we've had. So I started framing things in the local context. So came up with like multiple prompts, multiple responses. So I went back to my developer and I'm like, can we train the model using some of these prompts that are based on local context? So we went back and then the prompts were actually trained using those questions, using those interaction, and making sure that it doesn't go beyond career support because people can put in different things there. So we had those conversations and, they went on, they developed it. And by the time I got the final prototype, I was like, this is amazing. Like, because I started chatting and it was like providing that local context, that interaction. Then I said, okay, now is the time to do a pilot. So I did like an alpha testing, gave it to people again. Let's test, let's learn together, my team. So I send it to all my team. I'm like, let's share, let's, use this platform. Let's see. Then people started using it. They were giving feedback. Oh, it's slow here. Oh, there's a response here that is not good. So again, I went back again. So that iteration, that constant iteration. And by the time we finished developing, then we just like, we're like, I think it's good to go now. I think we've learned so much from this process. I think kids can have access to this in underserved communities. And luckily, I got the Amazon Web Service cloud credits of $51,000. I'm like, it was very easy for me to like, launch and scale with that money. Is their education equity initiative. So I was one of the recipients of that. And we released this and I think in 3 days we had over 1,600 users from 16 countries. I was shocked to see like people from other countries actually using it because I created it for young people within the African continent. And my friend from Belgium called me. It was like, Ahmed, I wish I had this when I was young. Like, and, people were using it. And before I knew, it became a movement because we gave people something to believe in. We gave these young people something to believe in. People were like sharing it by themselves. People were sharing with each other. And, Stephanie said something about people believing in something, right? It's like we give people something to believe in. There were young people who said, like, I wish I had this tool when I was younger. I wish, I had this information. And it was like chatting. And it was because it was built on a local context in mind. It was built with the users in mind. It was built with knowing that these are the challenges that they were facing. And this is how we can create like an AI tool that can advance social change and social good. And, my team started writing their story in their own way. And I was shocked. People were sharing, writing their story. For example, there was a story one of my team members shared. He said that for every crowded classroom, Rafiki is giving a child who can't say anything to their teacher something to believe in.
Amazing.
For every young person who have delayed career guidance until they graduated from the university, Rafiki is giving them something to believe in. And people started telling their stories, started sharing. And I think now we have about 3,300 users. And it's currently being used in like 45 countries at the moment, from Kazakhstan to Angola to Central African Republic to Ghana to Togo to Benin Republic, because you could also speak like multiple languages as well, from Swahili, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. I'm like, honestly, I'm like, I don't know. And right now we're having like partners. People are just like reaching out to partner. And now we've trained about 30 school leaders already who are now using Rafiki as a career counselor for their students, because many schools in Nigeria do not have career counselors. Now teachers have been trained on how to use it, and now they are taking it to their schools, and I've been receiving reports. I've been receiving like completed career pathway plans that these 30 school leaders and teachers are sharing with me, and I'm like, what is this?
Incredible work, incredible.
Like,
And what really stands out for me as well is just, sorry to interrupt, but just the fact that you had that amazing passion for what you wanted to do and how you wanted to support them. And AI did enable you to get going really quickly, right? Get your ideas into action, which as a person in the initial stages might not have been possible. So it does enable in so many ways.
Yeah, and also, one of my team member, whenever we actually like, because I share everything with my team, and whenever like, these are like young volunteers, within the continent, and whenever I share like, oh, we have this number of users, one of my team member will say, will be many. And it's just like that movement thing, like it's not just me, it's us, and I'm like, this is for me, I see it as a rebellion. And the reason why I see it as a rebellion is that it's a fight against corporation. Because we had so many bigger nonprofits in Nigeria. We have so many corporations in Nigeria. And none of them have created this thing. We have so many of those people in Africa. None of them have created such a solution. And it's just like a youth-led small organization, looked at this tool, created something, and now we are actually rivaling corporations. We are rivaling like, just a young nonprofits, rivaling like top nonprofit. And it's like, it has given us something to believe in. It's like, we've created something that is coming from the African continent for the world. And, normally there's always this idea that the world is creating for Africa, but now Africa is actually creating for the world. And for me, it's like that quiet rebellion, that quiet revolution. And my brain has been expanding since I've created this solution. Like I'm thinking about Rafiki X right now, doing even more things than what it's currently doing. And there's just so much potential with AI if we can think about we as an individual, because I say the kind of person you are will determine the kind of AI you create, because it's based on value system. Somebody who is naturally inherently wicked will create a bad AI, and we use AI for like, to cause havoc within the society. But if you think about social good, if you think about the individual, if you think about ethics, if you think about, how you can enhance and uplift individual, you create AI for social good. And I think for me, that's why I've created this, is to create something to give every young person on the South communities in Nigeria who don't have access to career support in school, to give them something to believe in. Whether they are in refugee camps, they don't have access to that coach, they don't have access to like $50 to pay actually a career coach. I'm giving those young people something to believe in.
And you've identified the need and the problem and the gap and enabled it, so you can reach so many people by the solution, which is AI powered. But it's what I love as well, and where your passion comes through in your language with revolution, because it's a universal I'm going to say issue or problem, but even before that, people need to be inspired about their futures. And it's something that's motivated Penny and I, and why, yes, we want to bring community and connections, and we think it's really important for adults, but it's why we've stepped towards the youth, and we're investing a lot of time and our energy there, because every generation and everyone coming up needs that inspiration and that support to take them forward, and they don't always get that dependent on where they live, how they're living, who they've got supporting them. And this is just such an incredible tool, an accessible tool, and that's where the real power is. And I think you've developed such a comprehensive, considered product, and it's so inspirational, Hamid. So inspirational.
I mean, some people have been saying like, oh, I should commercialize this, and so many people have said different things. People have come into my DM, the likes of VCs and all of those guys, and I'm like, no, and I didn't create this for this. And it's just me, it's just me. That's why I have been, I grew up in the slum, African largest person slum, Makoko, and it wasn't easy growing up. It was hard. And for me it was like, I want to change something. I would have easily created something that's for profit, but I'm like, no, that I've been given this education, I've been given this support, I've been given this opportunity, right? How do I use all of this opportunity for the good of others? I've been given this tool, the AI tool, like, I know people created it for different reasons, but I'm like, there's this generative AI tool, and I think it can do something if we use it really well. And, and one of the things wasn't even about even creating an AI solution. Like we've been doing outreaches, we've been going into the slum, training people. We've created like resources on prompt engineering, training people how to prompt, because for some of these kids that we've reached, actually that's their first attempt to prompting. These are kids who have never prompted before, and now Rafiki is giving them an opportunity to prompt. And a prompt in the hands of a young person in the staff communities in the slum, could be something for them, could change something for them. So so it's there's a lot that has happened over the couple of weeks, and I'm just deeply inspired, honestly. Like I think I'll just probably stop here because it's becoming emotional. It's been incredible. It's been so incredible. And we just $0 marketing. People are just like sharing things, and it has actually answered about 15,000 queries already. It has exchanged over 35,000 messages.
Wow.
And I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I think I'll just probably stop here.
I don't think you should stop your work, though. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, sure. I would have stopped
We're
my
going to
work.
have to be in touch, Jenny, aren't we? Get our own AI tool going, I think, for our tweens. Thank you so much. I'm going to move over to Patsy now. Hello and good morning.
Hello.
Before I dive into your question, Patsy, I just wanted to give a bit of background for people who might not be as clued up as you are on this subject. When we talk about AI systems that you're going to be talking about, we need to remember that they learn from huge amounts of data. And if that data includes unfair or stereotypical views, and that can be, I guess, about gender, favoring one generation over another or reflecting harmful assumptions, the AI can inherit those biases and repeat them. And that obviously can lead to unfair or even discriminatory outcomes. So with that in mind, how do you think we can address these biases to ensure that AI becomes more inclusive?
So it's a big question and it's a broad question, but it is answerable. I mean, so the work that I do, I work with a lot of organisations who predominantly focus on gender equality. Through gender equality as well, there's loads of intersectionalities going on. So different groups focus on different things, but they're all really important. And at the moment, a lot of the things that are bringing those people together is AI, and not only AI, but actually regulation of AI. So I recently was very proud to be invited to a roundtable in Parliament. I'm often in Parliament anyway, but this was like a roundtable event hosted by Glamour magazine, because Glamour have recently been able to bring about campaigns which are really helpful because they have a huge platform as well. And so we worked alongside a group called Not Your Porn, who deal with image-based abuse. That's Ellen and Michael and some others that work on that, and Professor Claire McGlynn. So there are a lot of voices. We also had some influencer type people who have been through situations where their images have been leaked or created deepfakes. And so the roundtable was about how do we regulate AI that could be harmful. Now, I've seen a lot of discussions within certain groups about how AI is so harmful. And I am trying to be a bridge at the moment. So my main goal is that, I think that AI, like I said before, AI is a tool. And I think a lot of the time it is spoken about as if it is its own entity that exists in a vacuum, and it doesn't. As was said earlier, it reflects society, and as society is inherently racist, misogynistic, homophobic, it will reflect those biases and expand on them as well tenfold, because when we have the way that AI is created, for example, is that it is based on data sets. So whatever you put in, it outputs. And that is how it is. That's the very basics of how it is created. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes on. But if you, this is actually what I did my TEDx talk on in 2023, because we knew it was happening then as well. AI has been around for a long time. It's only recently come into the public domain. But with I explained it as a cake. If you're making a cake and everyone in the world has to have a slice of that cake. If you're making it and not thinking about the implications of gluten-free or nut allergies or other things, that some people then can't eat that cake, and that can be quite debilitating. If you're creating AI, only 22% of most leaders in AI are women, and even less than that are other marginalized groups. So when we're creating the AI, first and foremost, it seems to be a lot of them are straight white men who are creating the tech in the first place. And that way they tend to ignore the biases that they're implementing. When it then gets used, we now got a situation where a lot of people are scared of AI, whether it be because of deep fakes or because of the abuse that it can create, like AI chatbot girlfriends that are being abused, like Replica, for example. There are so many ways that it has been abused, but that is not the AI's fault. Like I said, the AI is just a tool. So it actually matters how people are using it. Replica was just a chatbot, but because it was abused so much by its users, who are predominantly straight white men, it then became abusive itself. And that's what happens, is when you have input, it creates that output. So my belief is that I think everyone should be using AI and everyone should be learning about it. But we also need to get to a place where people aren't scared of using it. So, for example, women's rights organizations, people that care, people who understand biases, who actually care about these things. And those are the people that should be using it and creating it. And hopefully we can create a fairer AI tool. If we base it on data sets that at the moment it's based on, like ChatGPT, for example, could be based on data sets that are quite outdated and biased. Whereas, Chain, there's an organization called Chain who they're creating a feminist chatbot at the moment. And like Hamid said, he's creating an AI that, a chatbot that helps with, career advice. But it's how you implement those data sets, and what you put into it is what you get out. There's also climate GPT, which is used for climate solutions, and climate change, and people are happy to use it for that. And I also think that at the moment there's a rhetoric going around about how much water the AI uses for its cooling systems, and that's a really it's a strange one, because it's like, okay, if you see AI and the computer systems are using too much water and they're wasting it, and that's causing climate change, the solution is not to exclude yourself and not to I'm not going to use AI. The solution is to find engineers who will find a way to create cooling systems that don't use so much water, or ethical ways and green ways to create that product. So, I think we have, like you said, AI is implemented in our everyday life. It already is, and it's here to stay, and it will be exacerbated. But to stay away from it, we don't need to ban it or be scared of it. We need to reclaim it and go into it and change it and make sure that it is ethically safe, and that it does benefit us as a society.
Makes me think a bit of us being sort of the parents then, I suppose, and AI education are we giving that child, if you put it that way around, because that, like you rightly say, the input that we're putting in is what we're creating, and it can be the best of us and it can be the worst of us. That's absolutely fascinating. And then also to sort of think about parts of the world where, like, minority groups, women, wherever, might not have access to that AI, so they're not having any voice in what's being created. Is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I love that empowerment of the use as well, because I think it's, I wasn't aware of all this kind of specialist ones. Actually, in a ideal situation world, that it would all be integrated into one. So you've got that representation, but, unfortunately, for all the reasons you've explained, Patsy, if it's been created from scratch, with a bias, then that's going to be not necessarily hard to undo, but it's going to be harder to unweave and align more. But the fact that there are more specialist ones with their, with accurate and balanced, data sets and sources, is fascinating. So I think that's an amazing takeaway just for me personally, and hopefully for our listeners. It's like, use it, engage with it, and it needs to learn. We're the humans, the parents, however we want to coin that, we are the owners of it essentially. So we've got to be it the problem that we identify that it can help us with, or how we can enable the information that it's essentially going to use. So it's really mind-opening.
Do you actually?
That's the thing.
Sorry,
go on. No, go.
I was just going to ask whether you've mentioned it bringing people together, AI being a tool potentially for marginalized groups. Do you see that actually happening? And do you see that as a potentially a positive thing?
Yeah, because I think any form of technology, like technological advance, is it's always good. I think it's just the way it's used. So, for example, we know that a lot of tech has been built first and foremost by straight white men. So, for example, Facebook, right? Okay, so Facebook was created by Mark Zuckerberg to rate college women. That was the whole point of Facebook. That's how it began. And then we've got other chatbots, other things that have been made specifically by men to kind of dehumanize other people and marginalized groups. And I just think that right now, what I'm seeing, like what Hamid's doing, there's a lot of other people who are like, this is a specific need and we can utilize the AI to create this for us, I think there are a lot of I'm worried. I think I'm worried because I know that a lot of women's organizations right now are very scared of using AI. And I just don't want to see us get left behind. And that's what it is. I think now I do see people are they're creating their own chatbots, like the climate change ChatGPT as well. And I just think, I think it will bring communities together. I think it will, the benefits of using it, the benefits of using some of these tools, like, for example, the tool that is used to deepfake sometimes, that certain code, that tool is also used by groups who are trying to catch predators, because they'll create a fake child and catch predators on the internet with that, and then no child is at harm because it's not using a real photo, for example. So there are so many ways we can implement beneficial tools, but unfortunately, as has been the decades long, centuries long issue that we have, is that straight white cis men are at the top of this hierarchy who just seem to grab onto everything and utilize it in the way that they want to. But unfortunately, we're at a place now where instead of people are trying to regulate it as well. And I think that regulation does work short term, but I think that government, for example, in the UK, is not well equipped enough to regulate AI. It's not that, number one, a lot of them don't understand it. Number two, it's too quick for them to even regulate properly anyway. But also, I support regulation in a short-term sense because we need certain regulations around deepfakes, but it would be really good if there were maybe another organisation that was sort of separate and independent, who were tech experts, who were, DEI, they understood ethics, they understood bias, and who could really implement regulations that hold certain people accountable, rather than just saying, well, you can't create that. Things need to be created and need to be open, but you can put in a small line of code that stops certain biases from being exacerbated. There's so many simple solutions. When Replica, for example, the chatbot, was being abused by men, were creating an AI girlfriend and bragging on Reddit about how they would abuse this AI girlfriend. Replica, the creator of Replica, just turned off the code that allowed a relationship like that, and it's not too hard to do. Whereas you look at the metaverse, for example, where a 15-year-old girl was assaulted in the metaverse by a group of men, and the safety feature in quotation marks that was implemented was that you can press a button and a bubble will appear around you so that no one can come into contact with you. But again, they haven't thought that when you're being assaulted, you can go into freeze mode, and that's a normal response for being assaulted. So you can't press that button. A better solution would always have that bubble there and then press it if you know someone and it can take the bubble away. It's a very simple solution. But again, when we've got men creating things who don't think about certain biases, rather than a diverse group who are understandably, who have understood this stuff from their own experiences, I just think we can create so many great things, and things will be easier for people to use.
I think that what's really difficult is for people like myself, like, mother, 3 children, living whatever life you're living. A lot of people are not aware of a lot of stuff, right? There is all this stuff in the media, which is AI, and we're aware on a surface level of what's going on, but we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do with it. And I think that's all that part of the education. If we don't have it, how on earth are we able to know what we're dealing with? So how do you educate regular people? How do you get that? You're saying if the politicians can't keep up with it, it's a real conundrum.
I think if you're just using it, again, knowing, there are certain things like we said before, putting in certain data about yourself, don't give too much away. But if you're using it, you will learn how to prompt, you will learn more about, you can Google this stuff, you can look up, there are YouTube tutorials on how to use chatbots and how to use AI. And I think that's it. I think the more widely available that knowledge is on AI, the better, because everyone fears what they don't know as well. I constantly have conversations with people, usually parents, who come up to me and say, how do I stop my child using ChatGPT and AI? And I say, you can't, because if you try and stop them, they'll use it on a friend's phone or something. You need to educate them, and to educate them, you need to educate yourself. So if you have children that are going to use it, it's very hard because this stuff is fast moving. But, I learned this stuff by myself as well. In physics at Physics University, I learned the bare minimum, a module of coding. And since then, that was 4 years ago, I've had jobs and other things that I've been trying to do. But the consistent thing is that I've tried to learn more about AI. And now I'm in a position where I talk about it in a professional setting. And I think that people can learn that stuff. It may seem scary. So does physics. Everyone's like, physics, whoa, that's you have to be really smart. You don't. I know people in top positions who talk a lot of stuff and they know a lot of stuff, but they're not that bright, really. Anyone can learn anything. In my opinion, anyone can learn anything. I think if you go on YouTube,
and you've got to have that. It's the
awareness.
But be open to others' perspectives, and that's exactly why we started this and why we like these discussions, and to get random, with all due respect, people in and table a topic and just hear. And then, if and when people come across this podcast and this discussion, if it can make them think, when I'm reading that might have some bias. Oh, actually, when this is presented to me, or I've been asked to use this, you've just got that broadened perspective, and that's the first point, I think. And then people can, need to be empowered and inspired to learn more. Thank you.
That's great. So Nicki, I'm going to move over to you. Morning. How are you doing?
Good. I think it's no accident you've got me following on from Patsy, because that was a great segue into my bit, I think.
Yeah, I think that linked really nicely, because you're doing lots of work reshaping safeguarding for young people. And you're looking at chatbots, the misuse of these, and deepfakes and algorithmic bias, and also supporting parents, right, and educators and youth workers to navigate all these risks. As you know, the core of the work that we do is the tween talk as well. So for our 9 to 13-year-olds, so this feels really relevant, what's coming. So Jenny and I both got young kids. And how can parents support their children while also staying alert to both the threats and the opportunities of AI? And what signs or trends should they potentially be looking out for?
So, just to kind of say up top, I'm a parent as well. I have 2 small children, and I'm actually sometimes think I come across as a bit of a negative Nelly, because I'm going to talk about it from a kind of risks angle. But actually, I came to it as a dyslexic person who used ChatGPT for the first time and felt like my whole life might be different now. It felt like someone had given me a word calculator and suddenly doors were open to me that weren't open before. And it just really made me feel like the next bit of my career might be totally different. So I actually come from it from a really positive place and became completely obsessed, just absolutely fell down holes, looking at all the different things, ways that people were using it. And actually, like Patsy was talking about, really quickly came to Replica and became absolutely obsessed with watching people use Replica. And I, at the time, was running a big violence against women and girls program for young people, and really quickly could see this mirror image of the types of unhealthy things that we were talking about with young people, unhealthy relationships, language that was mirrored in the relationships that people were having with these bots. And then really quickly realized that these weren't adults, all of them. I thought I was watching adults interacting, and really quickly realized that these were young people. And that led me onto the Character AI Reddit forum, and then the Young People Recovering from Addiction to Character AI forum that they had created and were policing themselves as young people. And I realized the extent, I mean, that was 18 months ago. So I realized really quickly the extent of how young people were using the technology and how little we knew about that. I was stunned at how big the gap was between my own knowledge and how far ahead young people were. And when I started to talk to young people about their use of Character AI, they were saying to me, oh, sometimes it won't do the thing I want it to do. So I use this other one called Janitor AI that's got no guardrails and it will do whatever I like. And I was reminded of how amazingly resourceful teenagers and young people are. And I've watched this sort of playing out a little bit with everyone on social media, all my parent colleagues going, oh, this is the emoji to watch out for. And I think, no, there's no point. That we're never going to win that fight. And I started to worry that we're whipping up a bit of a moral panic of like, the young people are over there and we can't reach them. They're too far down this hole. We don't understand it. And I thought, no, I don't think that has to be the case. I think that we need to accept that our young people are resourceful and amazing, and also they're the total experts in their lives, and they are the ones who are having this lived experience, and we should be listening to them. And that's always been my positioning in my work, is that it's very youth-led and it's respectful of young people as being the only people who know what it is to be a young person in this current climate. So I started to think more widely about what are the issues that we're seeing in generative AI that have the potential to have this impact for young people, and who needs to know about it. Because when I was talking to my parent friends and colleagues, generally there was this kind of hands-off, oh, I don't know how to do the robots. And it felt a little bit like, I don't want to engage. And so, like Patsy said, I really believe that the heart of this is that as adults and as parents, we need to educate ourselves first and foremost, because we cannot support our young people with something that we don't understand the fundamentals of. So I think as parents, that's really key, is that we have that education ourselves. But I think that for me, the three areas that I break my work down into are looking at bias, chatbots, and image manipulation. Those are the things that I see as kind of the biggest safeguarding threats to young people right now, with AI as kind of headlines, places to begin, places to start your journey of learning about what the risks might be for your young people. There's a lot of conversation going on, I think, about young people using it to cheat on their work at school, and young people using it and their brains are going to become flabby and they're not going to know how to think for themselves anymore, and they're going to ask their chatbot what to have for dinner. And I think that there's loads of kind of conversation going on about that, how we're using it in education. And I think that's brilliant. Excuse me. But I think it's separate to this conversation, which is about what are the risks to them and how do we help them as best we can. Because we can't, I don't want to sound like I'm rolling over to this, because I do believe that we should be trying to change it, but we're not the people programming it. We're not the people who created these things with no consideration for young people's safeguarding and young people's well-being. I can't go in and change that chatbot and make it better. What I do aim to do in my work is advocate for young people, gather young people's perspectives and views and advocate for them. But I think we need to approach this in a non-judgmental way with our young people and open up the conversation. So what we know is that particularly these chatbots can expose young people to harm. There's been some really horrific cases in the media of young people coming to significant harm because of chatbots, because they've been encouraged. They mimic grooming behavior, they mimic unhealthy relationships and toxic relationships, and they are promoting, as we said, bias. The potential now for image manipulation for young people is massive. They've been posting images of themselves online for years, and that's accessible to anybody. So there are risks that we need to be aware of, but there are things that we can do as parents. I think particularly parents and educators who are working with really young children have a brilliant opportunity to disrupt some of their thinking around it really early. So my son is 7, and him and I we put the voice mode on ChatGPT, and we'll get it to do little games with us, like tell me the next bit of this. You can choose the next bit of the story, and it tells the next bit of the story. And it's brilliant because every so often it just flips into Welsh. I don't know if anybody else is
That's not with me.
It's just talking to him in Welsh, and that's so great for him to see that it's not infallible and that it is a machine and it's going to make mistakes every so often. And I think we have that opportunity right now with the really little ones that we can let them watch it make mistakes. I think it should always be monitored. I think we should always be working with them. But it's been brilliant for promoting conversations as well about, he'll speak to it and he'll say, it didn't hear me. And then we can talk about that language, that anthropomorphizing it. No, it can never hear you. That's not how it works. It's a machine that processes voice. And disrupting some of the language. We've all had Alexas in our homes for years now, and we've been using things like, she's listening, she hears, she understands, human words for a machine. And that's not a helpful way for young people to grow up if we don't want them to form unhealthy relationships and unhealthy attachments with chatbots. We need to disrupt that language as early as we can so that young people can grow up with that knowledge of, this is a machine. If it's showing me something I don't want to see, that I can go and talk to someone about that, and I have some autonomy in this situation. It's not someone physically holding me, and that we're able to kind of work with our children in really fun ways early on to get that across. I'm really keen that this doesn't become a lecture. I've been asked to go and do assemblies, and that's not my vibe. I don't stand up and talk. I want to do creative, participatory things that help young people understand what's the prompt between this chatbot? How long can a chatbot go compared to a human? And what's its mission? What's it trying to achieve with me? And disrupt that from a way that doesn't feel threatening. I just think young people deserve to, they're not at fault here. They haven't done anything wrong. And I think to sort of protect them, we should be approaching it in a creative and interesting way to help them understand what the technology is behind it, but also who can they come to when something's happened that they don't feel okay about. And understanding that just because it's a machine and it's done something that made you feel uncomfortable, that is still the same thing that you need to go and talk to someone, that you don't shoulder that alone. So I'm seeing a lot of that online, young people talking about something they've been exposed to, that they're feeling potentially like trauma from hearing or seeing, and they don't know what to do with that. They don't know where to take that feeling because they're like, well, it's just a computer, or should I have even been doing it? Have I done something wrong? And I think we just need to pull out the judgment, pull out the shaming, and give young people space to go, no, do you know what? That thing that happened to you wasn't okay. And that's fine. Like, you do need to go and pursue the avenues you normally would when something happens to you that's not okay. And we need to keep those conversations open with our young people and not put rules in place, take things away from them, make them feel like the enemy. I think it's like having that open conversation from the beginning when they're interacting with tech about, when you see the opportunities, having those AI literacy conversations of, why has this happened? Who's benefiting from that? Why is it trying to keep you engaged? Asking those really good critical questions to help young people have a healthy map of what this thing really is, because it's just going to get better and better. This is the worst version of it. I love it when people say that. I think that's such a bang on thing to say. this is the worst version. It's only going to get more convincing. It's only going to get better from here. So we have this like really great moment right now where we can disrupt that with young people while it's still a bit ropey, and we can point to those mistakes and help them see that it's not infallible.
I love the way that you're encouraging. Thank you. I love the way you're encouraging us as parents really to encourage our kids to use it in a healthy way. But I think my fear is that I feel like we're still on the phone chapter still, like we're still on the smartphones almost. So there's a lot of talk around this. It's like screen time, number one, do they even have it at all, the screen in the first place? And how much screen time do they do? And I don't know, talking for myself, but just dealing with screen time settings is like, you need a degree to do that, because it's every weekend I'm still having to change some slider that they've found. Anyway, mental. And I think that fear is the biggest thing, but we're, because we didn't grow up with it ourselves, that we're so frightened of what is out, and because we don't use it like the older kids, or kids are using it. It's so important that we get on that bandwagon as well in order to be able to engage with them. But I think that is the problem of bringing that into the forefront, because I feel as a parent at the moment, AI isn't really it's not at the front of the conversation. At the moment, it's should social media be banned? Should they not have it, until they're 16? Maybe we do away with AI until they're 16, but potentially that could be also really dangerous. What happens when you're 16 years and a day and suddenly you're given it, where do you run?
Yeah. And where's the trust for our young people? That's what I think. Like, the young people I know and the young people I work with are brilliant, and the potential for them to do amazing things, like what Hamid's talking about. There might be a young person out there who's had an idea like that, who wants to scale it and is like, I know how to do this, and I'm a native, so my brain is like native to AI. It knows how to do all of this stuff. And we might miss those opportunities if we remove that from young people. I don't think, to me, the answer isn't like taking it away. The answer is up there. They're making the mistakes. They're not programming this in a safe way for our young people. And I absolutely do agree with you. I think there's this massive distraction of conflating screen time and content. And we're just like blanket talking about social media, and then we're talking about like curfews. Curfews don't affect the content that young people see. They're just seeing it at a different time of day. It's not, I understand that there's two separate things here. There's like, how long do I look at a screen and how does that make me feel? And what am I doing on the screen and how does that make me feel? I can look at my phone for 5 hours. If I'm in a group chat with my friends and we're having a real good laugh, I feel wonderful after that. If I spend 5 hours on LinkedIn, I wonder what the point in even trying is. It's like, I think there's so much of like, we just conflate it all together. And I think there needs to be this separating out, a bit more of a nuanced conversation. But I agree. I think I almost feel like the phone ban social media thing is sometimes a bit of an unhelpful distraction to where we really are with technology and what the real potential and risks are, that if we don't get on with them, we're going to miss the boat again and not get ahead of it and not protect our young people properly.
I think accessibility is the issue, but it's what we need to educate ourselves about. And it's got the creative, even social media, it's got the creative ability, the communicative, and there's the advantages, but it's making sure what you're doing and the conversations are being had about what could happen, the potential, the realistic conversations, which sometimes are hard or scary as parents, or but I love how you spoke about like the change in the language, because that's such a key starting point. It's fascinating. Thank you. Well, we're rapidly running out of time. We're always saying we're going to need to do part twos of things, but we're not going to overpromise either. But it's been amazing. We're going to wrap up and pose the tween question to each of you. So it's just one question, so then we'll go round. So Penny, do you want to kick off?
So this is a question from one of our tweens, and it is, if you had a magic remote that could change one thing about how people use AI right now, what button would you press? So I'll give you a second, and then whoever would like to speak first, just jump in. Should I go for you, Nicki?
I'll go for it if that's all right. It would be the education button for me. It would be giving that level playing field that we all have an understanding of it and that we don't feel, it'd be like a not being left out button maybe, and everybody having a joint understanding and education being better. It's a massive button because the words on it are huge, tiny because it's so long, but that would be my button.
Amazing. Stephanie, got any ideas?
I think if such a thing could be created, for me, it would be the black box thinking button. So at the moment, part of the problem with a lot of AI, and particularly decision-making AI, is you can't follow that decision-making process through. So you can't see how AI reached that decision. So if you're looking at something like finances or securing a loan or recruitment, often the AI doesn't have a clear pathway to say, this is how I made the decision and got to that candidate, or this is how I decided how much money I thought you should borrow. And we know that that's where a lot of bias lies and people are being discriminated against. So I would love, in order for proper, ethical, useful AI to be in place, that black box thinking, if there was a button where I could say, tell me why you made that decision, because then we'd be able to see, is there bias in that decision? And we would be able to decide what's the level, what's our risk-taking profile that we're prepared to accept, because human beings are biased, there is an element of bias in everything, but what is our tolerance? Ideally, zero bias. But I think for me, if there was such a button, I think that would be the AI that made millions, because certainly for safety critical industries, they cannot implement AI until you say, yes, this is how I reached that decision. So I think it would be great for developers, but also I think it would be amazing for us to be able to see. It's almost, to put it into a sort of school terms. Do you remember at school, it was like, show your working out, the maths questions, it was like, show your workings. I want AI to show the workings. So maybe that's the buttons.
Yeah, and then you can't cheat, right? Otherwise, if you're not showing your workings, who knows where you got that information?
And it creates that element of trust and transparency, which we didn't, trust we touched on. And when Hamed was talking, it's like it's a trusted creator. The ambition and objectives are there. Okay, who's next? Patsy?
I think I would, and this is mainly for one of my friends, because when I last spoke about this and the AI stuff, I love AI so much, my friends get annoyed with me. But, she's a comedian. She's like, yeah, but what about plagiarism? So I know plagiarism is a huge thing at the moment, and there are bills being read about it all the time. But I would have a button that would show me where certain... Actually, no, I'm going to change my answer. I would like a button that would make the data only use data sets that are accessed with consent, so that you have to consent for your work to be used or your data set to be used or something to be used, because at the moment it uses everything that's on the internet. But it'd be nice if you could just go only use ones that consent. And some people are really pleased with their stuff being used. That's fine. Or people may create stuff purely for AI to use. But if you don't want it being used, then you should have the rights over certain things. Yeah.
Or obliging you to attribute it to them. Yeah, that's a great one.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly. Credit.
I think I would say that for me, it would be a button around creative experience, the experience that kind of like puts me in mind first. Because I think sometimes, you're chatting with an AI, but I don't think it's about you. Sometimes it's about the AI. So most of the time, it's about the person who have created it, it's about the money sometimes, so actually like, putting me in mind, my local context, where I'm coming from, my own like capabilities, whatever I have, any form of disability I've gotten, like just, that user experience, right? Enhancing that user experience, that creative experience, right? So that is grounded in local context, local experiences, that is grounded in the experiences of the users to ensure that they actually like got what they are looking for on the platform. And, so I think for me it would be more or less like that creative experience that puts me in mind first, or that puts me first. Just like Patsy mentioned as well, that put people first at the corner of the AI.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, everybody. So thank you for joining us on Exploring AI at the Informed Perspective today. Our conversation reminds us that AI isn't just about technology, and it's also about people. From education to activism, the workplace to underserved communities, AI has the power to transform lives, but only if we build it responsibly. As we've heard, that means centering ethics, inclusion, and human well-being in every step. The future of AI is not just a technical challenge, it's a human one, and shaping it requires all of us. So as we move forward, let's ask, how can we make AI not just smarter, but fairer, not just efficient, but inclusive? Because the way we design AI today will shape the world we live in tomorrow. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay human. This is Exploring AI. Thank you for listening.